Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 7th virtual community session. We thank you for joining us here today on this lovely August summer day. My name is Crystal Dory, and I'm a member of the communications team for KMK. If you've seen our past sessions, you know we're doing this virtually this year because of COVID. Hopefully things are starting to come on the other side of that, and things will be able to change, and we'll start to get back into communities a bit more. So throughout this year, our plan has been to hold a session each month, each featuring a different department at KMK. We do record each session and post to our YouTube pages and our Facebook page. And we encourage you to check out all our past episodes if you haven't got a chance to see them yet. It's been a couple months. We did miss July's just because of our summer holidays and closures and things that were going on here at KMK. But we hope to bring you the NSPI update into the fall. And we know that Tanya and Maxine have some wonderful things to share with you about what's happening with the Nova Scotia Power file. So this month, we have featured our wildlife department. We also have a newsletter that goes out every month that accompanies these sessions. So if you want to be on our newsletter list, if you haven't received it, you want to read a bit more about what's happening at KMK and read Allison's update, and Allison is going to be talking with us today, you can send us an email at info@mi'kma'rights.com, or you can go onto our website at mi'kma'rights.com and go on to the Contact Us form and send me a little message, and I'll make sure to add you to our distribution list. So as I said, Allison Bernard is our wildlife lead. I often call him our moose man because that's what he deals with the most. But Allison is going to do a presentation for you, do a little talk to you today and update everyone on what's happening with the moose and wildlife file. So without further ado, I will turn you over to Al. Al, welcome.
Hi guys, it's Allison Bernard. I'll do a general introduction. I'm from Eskazoni in Cape Breton in Unama'ki. I've been associated with this stuff for many years, as many people know. Anyway, I'm a former police officer, and I'm also a former council member for our community. Been all over the place nationally, but the biggest thing I've ever been involved with was the wildlife and hunting for the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. Over the years, I've worked in as a guidance counselor and other things. As I said, my father was a chief for 25 years in our community, and I was going down that road and decided I took a side road. Ended up at KMKNO, which where I love what I'm doing because I'm certainly passionate about hunting and fishing rights and rights in general. And I think that's where I am today is probably the best place for me. In any case, I'll give you a brief history of what's going on in our province and where it's come from and where it's heading and where we're at today. This all started, moose hunting for me, it all started back in when I was in university. Actually, me and a good friend of mine, Darren Google from Eskazoni, Joe B. Marshall, along with Saugage Henderson, were professors at UCBU when we were in school. So a year after my graduation from high school, I was there talking to these two university profs, Joe B. and Saugage, and they introduced us to our treaties and all that fun stuff that we didn't really look into way back. But regardless, the history lesson that I learned there, and I knew some parts of it from my grandfather, who always talked about our hunting and fishing rights and what we all deserve and we have for the Mi'kmaq. So anyway, back in '86, I was in university first year, and I learned that 1752 treaty was already, valid and good stuff was coming out of that. And in terms of what I was, back then you had to read, really. There wasn't really such a thing as a computer where you jump on and you get your information from Google and so forth. But in any case, we learned that we have hunting and fishing rights, and we knew that there was moose in the Highlands. So lo and behold, the next day we showed up at the university telling our professors, we're going hunting this afternoon. And yes, we did. Um, we went hunting and we went to the Cabot Trail. So we ended up in Ingonish. Um, we saw a big bull. It was side of the road, and it wasn't pretty at all. I can admit to that because my buddy jumped off the vehicle. Well, we parked and he jumped off and he walked into the bush quite a ways where we saw a big bull where it was being observed, and he shot it. Anyway, I walked in with my gun, and next thing you know, it came charging after me. So I put some rounds into him and we killed it. Long story short, we were arrested maybe about 2 hours later on the highway heading back home to Escazone. Um, that case went off provincially, and after about a year and a half or so, we didn't have a lawyer at the time, but we argued a good case ourselves. And we ended up walking out of the courtroom winning our case to hunt moose. We were charged for hunting moose out of season. So a couple of years later, I think it was 88 or something like that, people were charged. There was a protest hunt by Grand Chief and chiefs of Nova Scotia and others that took part in that. So in the assertion of our rights. They all went off to Hunter's Mountain. And by that time, I was a police officer, so I wasn't I didn't want to take part in any troubles to arrest anybody or anything like that, but I stayed back. There was helicopters all over the place, DNR from all over the province, and RCMP everywhere. So there a lot of people were arrested. But later on, all these charges were dismissed because of our earlier case that I myself and Darren went to court on anyway. These charges were dismissed because of that. So we were off and running now with our moose activities. So, after that protest, we kind of, I think the chiefs and the union started negotiating stuff of how we can gradually get into that. And I guess one of the older ways of doing business and stuff, it was always a give and take type of a situation. So the province wanted us to have tags, and we only got a certain amount of tags to hunt moose. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, we only had about 20 tags for Escazone to harvest moose. And back then, moose was very plentiful, right? And that was kind of absurd to get 20 tags. In any case, we took them. And actually, as a police officer, I was assigned to actually distribute tags, and we did draws in Escazone for these tags, and we let them out every day. We had a draw. Everybody participated. It went well, but after a year or so, that sort of went away, and people started asserting their rights, and which is a proper thing to do. So we did away with the tagging system. There was a lot of animals up there. So that was fine. That went well. And up until today, this is how we hunt. But we had issues over the years that, that people were hunting up there that shouldn't be hunting, that were not Mi'kmaq. Yeah, they were First Nations people from all over the country that moved to Nova Scotia and whatever for other various reasons. But we had Métis on that mountain. We had other First Nations like Mohawks and Blackfoot and other Crees up there hunting moose in our territory. So they were taking a lot more animals than there should be taken because this is Mi'kmaq. And when I say Mi'kmaq, I just mean for Nova Scotia for what we have. But at the end of the day, we only have one certain area because we do have the mainland moose, but that's severely in trouble right now, and we're trying to do a recovery system on them. So the only moose that were able to be harvested were in Cape Breton. So back in the early 1940s, I believe the moose population in Cape Breton was eradicated, really, and they had to bring I think 14 or something like that animals in from Alberta to Cape Breton. They repopulated to a point where we were over 5,000 strong back then. So over the years, we've generally maintained a good operation, and we were practicing Nadugaling for the most part, but that's a concept that really wasn't brought back until today. These days, last many years, because there's a lot of stuff that's associated with that term, a lot of respects that have to be gained, and you learn from a lot of stuff from elders. So Nadugalink is a way of just taking what you need. You don't abuse anything. Environment and the animals especially, you have to give thanks for all your activities up there, because we are only here for a little while, but we have to have enough out there for 7 generations as we move forward. Anyway, that's the first part of that. So we did that tag hunt, but when I talk about tags now, it almost makes sense that we might have to go back into that, but I'll get into that soon. And a few years ago, we had such a population of moose in the park where you can't really harvest animals. I guess the Mi'kmaq can, if we really wanted to assert our rights in discussions with the park people, that that's something that might happen in the future. But as you see in one of those pictures in front of us, this is the moose meat that was taken from the park, North Mountain. And you see, observe the hunters hauling a moose. The grass that's growing there, that's actually like almost hay. So that was taken over that area, North Mountain, because overgrazing. The moose were eating themselves out of house and home. So there had to be something done. So over the years, we were supposed to have a 5-year hunt, but due to protests and other things that happened during this cull, so-called cull, it was a cull is a non-native word. It was a harvest for us, for the Mi'kmaq. And you couldn't really relate to anything like that because we don't kill animals just for fun. So that's why we didn't really call it a cull in our area. The Mi'kmaq referred to it as a harvest, like anything else. So, over the years, we harvested maybe close to 150 maybe animals, 200 animals come out of that. And we KMKNO took the bill, and we did the butchering, the meat cutting. Distribution of animals went to all communities in Nova Scotia, and including homeless shelters, on and off reserve. We gave some meat to Feed Nova Scotia. That actually, we actually went a little bit further than that. There was a few families up north that were really having a hard time financially, and they just couldn't survive, barely getting by with anything. We donated a couple animals to the communities around North Mountain, Cape North, and so forth. So we helped out a lot of people, not just the Mi'kmaq. A few animals over the years went to Halifax, the Friendship Center. They appreciated that, and the Mi'kmaq population in the area. They all were happy during the fall because they know they would get a good chunk of meat coming towards them because of our harvest. Everything was done in such a way that, the Mi'kmaq and how we respect the environment and animals. Every animal that was taken out of there was actually, we gave back. We did ceremonies, tobacco offerings, and we prayed. At one point, it hit us so hard during that hunt that we actually went home. We told the park, we're just going home. We need a couple of days break, but emotionally and mentally, it really affected us because we took quite a bit of animals up there, and it bothered us. Being Mi'kmaq and who we are, practice of Nadugalink and respecting the environment and animals around us had an impact on us. So that was the park harvest. So, this is the respect we have today. We've gone a long way from the 80s to where we're at today, basically co-managing the resource between DNR or Department of Environment that has been changing their names over the years with the province. So the province generally accepts who we are, and they know of our assertion to rights, hunting and fishing. So we have a good relationship. We take part jointly in efforts like counting animals and so forth over the winters or early springs with flybys and zones where we actually do head counts of animals. What we're able to see from the helicopters or airplanes that were used over the years. But you know, numbers of moose have declined, and there's issues over when we were in the park. We actually were called to a situation where a different part of the highlands where we had to go investigate. There was an animal that was hurt on side of the road. We all thought that it was hit by a vehicle, and that wasn't the case. Samples were taken, and actually a brain worm came from that. Um, we discovered that there was a brain worm in the animal. So brain worms will kill moose and other like mule deer and other species of deer when they come into contact. It doesn't. And brain worms come from the deer, the white-tailed deer. So when moose graze in the same areas, you know, whatever they let loose in the territory, and if moose consume shrubs and other stuff that might have been, left behind by deer, they generally get this brain worm if it's in deer. So we have an issue right now with brain worms. So this year, actually, we're thinking about authorizing an antlerless deer hunt around areas where moose and deer, uh, I guess, get together or graze in the same areas, just to prevent that. So that's an issue for us, and we're taking care of that. We're going in a way where I think we can correct all of that stuff. We had issues over the years that we had people from all over the province come into our territory in the Highlands with bear tags, and what these people were doing were actually hunting moose. There wasn't a big patrol because that's a Highlands is pretty big. There's over like 360 miles of gravel road in the Highlands, and has about 6 or 7 exits where people can go out of there. And it's nothing to see a fish tub out there or other tubs for bear bait and so forth. But these individuals were actually taking moose rather than the bear that they were supposed to be hunting. A lot of people were taking Mi'kmaq, and with bear tags, of course, that's the only way they'd be up there and not be charged for hunting moose. So they figured out a way to get beside the law and work around it. But that door has been closed over the last couple of years, especially now. We made arrangements with the province, so we changed the articles of stuff that the hunting guidelines and so forth, which eliminated that door or way of getting up there. So the only people that be able to be up there are the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. But again, we also had issues there, with that, because anybody that has a loophole, that sees a loophole, they're going to take it. So we're trying to close all of those doors, and the clear directive actually has been given to the province, DNR and others by the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, that the only people who would be hunting up there would be the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, and nobody else. Or people that have a hunter's card or harvest card. That's a process that we were involved in over the last many years, that we actually can have hunters up there that were given special cards by the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia that says, they are Mi'kmaq and they're able to be hunting up there. But not a lot of people have passed the criteria, but some have, and they hold these cards and they're able to hunt. So, you know, it's an ongoing issue. We have to take very careful measures to hold on to that because as Mi'kmaq, we always practice 7 generations of holding on to what we have. We just can't live in the day that we hear that we're actually here. Um, we have to save it for the Mi'kmaq coming that are not here. Many more generations. We don't want anything to happen to this population because, as I said earlier, we had moose up there in the 1940s. They were all eradicated. We had caribou on Cape Breton, but they were all killed off by the settlers that came to our lands, and that's what they did with the moose. They actually stories are out there that the caribou that we did have were just driven off the cliffs of Cape Breton, um, slaughtered. And I suppose that's what they did with the moose also, because there are people from the other side of the world or Europe that came in, they were all farmers. That's all they needed to do. That's all they knew how to do. So they cleared land and they pushed animals away and they killed animals. They wanted the room for livestock. Well, that's where we're at, and we're taking precautions right now that that are leading into the right direction. I think. I suppose there's other things that are at play up there, but we generally are on top of everything. Um, And if there's a day where we have to um, not let non-native people hunt and moose in their territory, that might happen yet because, as I said previously, numbers are not as strong as they were in the 80s and 90s. And if it keeps, coming down, we might have to argue and fight with the province and cancel the provincial hunt. That's always that's been swung around a few times already, but that's the last resort. If anything, at the end of the day, the Mi'kmaq will only be able to hunt up there if we can't actually maintain that resource at that level we're at. The numbers are roughly around uh, between 2000, I guess, and 2400, somewhere around there. That's a general estimate because how we come up with these numbers, it's a formula that's done by DNR and it's all a mathematical equation. So every square kilometer that's being surveyed over like late winter, early spring by the helicopters and staff from our office also and UINR have taken part in that, and other organizations. I believe Native, not Native Council, the Mainland Mi'kmaq Confederacy of the Mainland Mi'kmaq have taken part in that. The counts also, which is good. It's great for everybody to be included in this because we are all Mi'kmaq, whether we're from Cape Breton or mainland. We are a nation. So anyway, that's the lowdown on the moose, and if there's any other questions, if there's anything that you want to ask me, by all means, I'm here to answer whatever you have. Yeah. So
Thank you, Allison. That was a really informative overview about what has happened in the past and what is currently happening today. Actually, while you were talking, I went behind me and on my shelf, I got my own copy of the Moose Harvesters Guidelines because I thought that even though I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, we didn't talk about this. It might be something that you want to mention. And I'm saying that because I know that recently it's, we all live on social media and see what happens on social media and saw that there was people commenting about in this heat wave that we're having right now, some moose coming off the mountain. And, there is things in the guidelines about when we can harvest according to our traditions. But I thought that maybe that might be something you would like to address in this conversation.
yeah, of course, we do have in those guidelines, I believe we have August 15th was the current that hasn't been changed as a starting point, but that's just a starting point of when people should be or can be hunting. It's today's standards and today's weather and global warming. That's really impractical for anybody to do because over the last few days, as you said, you mentioned social media. there was somebody arguing. I think it was Bobby Gould or some. I forget who it was from Waikagma that said, and took pictures of a moose, 28, 29-degree weather, back of a truck. Still had to hide on it and so forth. Yeah, the guidelines state that, but we are in the process of trying to change all of that. We've had two conferences with the Mi'kmaq, the hunters of Mi'kma'ki, that came down to Wamacook at one point. And we discussed all of this stuff and the need to hunt at later dates because Nedugulink is a concept that needs to be entrenched and really brought forth because it all has to do with respect of the animal and how you treat the animal and your food and so forth. So hopefully we're trying to push that back into September 1st, has to be in the starting date. Maybe in the future we can. But there's a lot of things, like I said, I think we need to talk about the tagging system. If numbers decline more and that brainworm activity starts to take hold a little bit more, then we might be into trouble with our moose herd. So, tags might be a way of the future because many years ago we used to say tags were no good for anybody. Why should you want to tag if you're a Mi'kmaq that have a right to do so? But with those rights, you have a responsibility under, with any right that you have, for conservation. You need to understand that, and people need to understand that really carefully because if we're at a point where moose are so much in trouble, that scale, if it tips on the left, it might bring the whole population down. And we might have to do a moratorium of some sort that we will not be able to hunt moose until the populations go up. So we don't want to go down that road. So the best thing to do is work with the hunters, and which we do. DNR, when I saw DNR up till about 10 years ago, I used to wear a frown. I used to say, well, what do you guys want? What are you guys doing here? Harassing our hunters and so forth. Now that's not the case. Even our hunters that used to be so much against the province and DNR are welcome in sight because they do the bidding of everybody, yes, but they have a law. They have laws that they have to enforce. So that there's certain things. Things won't happen to the Mi'kmaq, but the Mi'kmaq are taking it upon themselves to report illegal hunting now by non-natives and others that are doing stuff. So we are working very closely with DNR in the province. I can honestly brag that Nova Scotia are hunting right now and are in our efforts in our relationship with the province, the DNR and so forth departments are one of the best in the country. That's the type of relationship we have. It's a great working relationship. There's a respect for all the chiefs and there's respect for provincial departments of hunting and fishing. But we're moving into a direction where actually we're co-managing the resource right now, and that's a great thing. I don't think any other province can say that. So we're definitely far ahead in that game. So it's something to be proud of.
Something to be very proud of.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the code management? I know through part of this co-management plan with the province, the Mi'kmaq have been part of setting up checkpoint stations at the entrance to Hunter's Mountain. So can you tell us a little bit about what the checkpoint stations are about? I know we work with UINR on them, but we're collecting moose samples. Why and what happens to those samples every year?
Um, there is a reason for our madness, yeah. For one thing, due to the low numbers of moose over the years, we get our numbers. It's not just by airplanes and helicopters and stuff that we do. We talk to the Mi'kmaq hunters themselves, and all the hunters actually, to get a general sense of where these animals were taken or where there used to be animals they're not seen anymore. So it's not just numbers mathematically derived, but it's numbers that the Mi'kmaq, the hunting community of the Mi'kmaq, say we're not having any, well, as much good luck as they used to have in taking animals, and the hours of effort to take a moose and days and the efforts that are required today a little bit bigger than or much longer. It's not only that. We used to go into like wetlands, and the province changed the Wetlands Act. It wasn't because of the Mi'kmaq. It was through non-natives going into lands and territories and tearing up the whole habitat that they destroyed really. But these numbers, we need the science work. They take the jawbones just to get the age. They take the antlers, not the antlers, but the heads. Um, if it's not going to be a trophy or something that they might want to use for traditional purposes, the antlers, they'll give them to DNR for samples. Organs, the liver, and I think the heart, and the lungs. All of these are samples that need to be taken just to get a grip of the brainworm activity or any other type of sicknesses that might be up there before we lose track of what's going on or issues. And with these samples, they're sent to PEI. Um, I believe it's the department where they check farm animals, and UINR sends their samples, salmon and eel, also to UPEI to get the proper diagnosis of sicknesses that might come from, either from the fish or for moose or deer. It's just a place in the Maritimes where they send all these samples to get a good picture of a proper picture of what's going on with these animals. Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
science.
yeah, I think it really shows how the all harvesters, the Mi'kmaq or not, can actually help have an active role in protecting the species and ensuring that the species stays healthy and the population stays good. And if it means that you're dropping off parts of your harvest, um, I'm not a hunter, so it kind of grosses me out, I'll be honest. But it's good for the longevity of the species. So I applaud those who are hunting in ways that they're helping us and to know what is the future of the moose. I think that's really important.
It's important because a person like me, I've hunted all my life. I've hunted and fished all my life, and I've noticed that drop myself. And I haven't taken an animal the last 3 years actually because I'm not comfortable with it. I definitely need one this year probably, and hopefully, if our creator wishes, or the moose wish, they'll offer themselves to me. And the last animal I took was like 3 or 4 years ago, as I said, and it generally offered itself to me. I prayed, and I felt bad for taking it because I last 7, 8 years, one animal.
Wow.
That's how much it bothers me. So I'm into that mood right now, and that I feel for every animal out there in her. If I don't have to, I actually, the last animal I took, I kind of hollered at it, go away, and go away. Like I managed to, send off a couple animals, and I prayed some more because I was involved in a hunt where it really bothered me. An animal was killed, and I could hear the crying from the animal, and it just killed me, and it just totally destroyed me. It brought out who I am, I guess, internally, but I managed to get beyond it, and I prayed, and I did manage to take one, and I felt sorry, and I prayed over it, and I felt good. The animal was dispersed when I got home. I just took some of it and I gave it all away. But my whole family is saying, stop giving your moose away. And I said, I haven't shot any in 3 years. So I'll probably take one this year.
Well, I think that just goes to show the respect that you and a lot of our Mi'kmaq harvesters for Umsitnogama. It really means a lot to all of us. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. If you're tuning in, you know that we're not necessarily live today, but if you do have questions, I know Allison will be more than happy to answer any of your questions. So you can send them in to us. If you go on to our team page on the website, Allison's email's there, my email's there, or you can send it into the info address or the contact us form. And I know that Allison will be awesome and answer any questions that he gets from community members. But I know that I get a lot of questions all the time. They come into our address. So I'm going to ask some of these questions that I hear on a regular basis. And I know you answered some of them a little bit, but the very first one is, who can hunt moose?
Well, only Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia could actually hunt moose. People that have a status card with one of the bands within a province, and also the people that qualify as, that process that I mentioned um, through the Nova Scotia process. The hunter harvester cards, or not the hunter cards, but the harvester cards, which allows an individual to hunt or fish on provincial, I guess, territory. Um, but this is a card that's given by the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. But there's certain criteria that you have to meet for you to be accepted or being able to obtain that card. Uh, Only a status card, and that card that comes from the assembly is valid. Nobody else can hunt in our territory for any other purposes.
And for anyone who doesn't know about the Woolloneginu process that Allison is talking about, and you want to learn more about it, you can visit Mi'kmaq with a W, ns.ca, and there's information on that website about the Woolloneginu process, why it was created, how to apply, and all the frequently asked questions that people have about why the Woolloneginu process was actually started. So thank you for mentioning that, Allison. Another question I get all the time is, and I'll use myself as an example, because I don't want to hunt. I love moose meat because it's in my own new blood, but I don't want to hunt. I'm not into the gore. I'm very fortunate. My brother is an awesome harvester, and he's always willing to share because that's the Mi'kmaq way. He's always willing to take care of his sister. But for those who aren't fortunate in my situation, they don't want to hunt, but they'd really like some moose meat. Is there any way they could get some?
Well, yeah. You can actually, like, for yourself, I'll use you as an example.
Okay.
If you're not married, or anybody else that's not married to a Mi'kmaq person, and you're not capable of harvesting animals, you can actually still go up there yourself. But I think you do need a hunter's firearms FAC, valid FAC, because you have to hold a gun license. And over the years, that was kind of looked away from because we were just starting to get into that. And there was other processes within the country that allowed sustenance hunting to take place, and you didn't really actually need that. That's almost gone away right now, and I think that's basically for the north. But around our area territories, they require you to have an FAC or hunters or a firearm certificate to hunt animals up there. But you can take your spouse, whether they're Mi'kmaq or non-Mi'kmaq, along to help. The only thing is that they cannot shoot the animal, or they cannot field dress the animal. They can help take the animal out, but they cannot be a part of any hunt, physically or actually being a part of it. But you can have your spouse there as a helper in your hunt, and other community members, or you can actually pay somebody to go take an animal for you. I know there's one of the questions, a lot of times I'm asked that are you allowed to sell moose meat? Yeah, yes, you are. As a moderate livelihood, you are allowed. But fortunately, you know, moderate livelihood in fishing and the lobster have taken away that kind of stress on the animals that were being used. We don't condone the act of, hunting moose to sell it. I don't. Most people don't. But today, dealing with moderate livelihood, that's your right. You can actually do that. And some people still do so, not per se to get money for shooting all these animals. So they might subtract some funds for because it's not cheap to go up there. And people with that are on social assistance or don't have vehicles, which is like 85% of Eskasoni, there's a big population. They really can't afford to go up there. So you might get misleading information on some people that are actively hunting too much up there. but they might be up there hunting for others and communities. Like I know Waikagma does a lot of hunts, and they sponsor and they pay people to hunt for them, which they have freezers. I know over the last many years, Chief Rod, who was the former chief, and I don't know if Chief Annie will continue, probably will, but they sponsor hunts and they pay for the butchering and they hold on to the animals in a community freezer. And over a couple of weeks, you get your allocation of moose meat and whatever else that they offer. But that's a means of getting some moose meat and some venison to your refrigerator and freezers. Other than that, that's the only way I think.
I'll
Yeah.
still let my brother hunt for me.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell him it's his job.
You know, it's a great.
That's the perk of being related to me. You got to hunt for me.
Yeah. The experience alone will bring you down to if you don't like hunting and if people say I don't like the bush and I don't like this or that, all these excuses. The first time you go to the Highlands and you spend the night and you spend a couple of days there, you're going to reattach to who you are. That's how I feel. I'm at peace when I'm in the Highlands. I don't see anybody. I might see a few people around, but you're back in a territory that you know your ancestors are around you up there. I'm telling you, there's maps that I've seen that from the 1800s that call that whole area Mi'kmaq hunting territory. Um, and that's where all our ancestors were hunting caribou and moose for many, many hundreds of years. So I think they're still around and you'll feel it. You know, sometimes you get those hairs behind your head stand up and you know something's around you, but you learn to accept it for what it is. It's not something bad, but you really reattach to nature when you're up there. For some reason, it does that to me, and I believe everybody else has that same feeling.
All right. So maybe I'll go, but I'll give you a call.
Yes,
So I better get some cell phone reception when the bugs get too bad and I need you to come rescue me.
lots of off.
Let me look at some other questions that I get. Oh, people ask when and where can I hunt for moose? We've talked a lot about Cape Breton Highlands. I know that there are apparently mainland moose species at risk. But is there any other place that people can hunt for moose in Nova Scotia?
The only place is Cape Breton. It's illegal to hunt for everybody, mainland moose. They are endangered. So we fall into a situation where, yeah, we take one, you know, it's you'll be in trouble. It's a conservation issue. They're protected, so we can't do that. And as Mi'kmaq, we should never do that anyway to a species that's in trouble.
Yeah, conservation needs to be important for everyone.
It's paramount.
Yeah. So is there a difference between the hunting season for Mi'kmaq and non-Mi'kmaq?
There is. We hunt traditionally for many reasons. We started hunting like when I was a kid. I remember hunting deer late August, September, early parts, because generally we wait for like some of these animals that we used to hunt. They were so plentiful, we really didn't care if it was a female or a male. But we know as you grow older and get wiser, these animals have babies to tend to, like the females. When you talk about deer, when you talk about moose, so you know the guidelines say that August 15 is an open day for Mi'kmaq. They don't have to. They can hunt in June if they want to, but that's kind of disgusting, really, in anybody's standards. And July, which has happened, we frowned upon it, and we know of people that did this, and we gave them a gentle talk and that they shouldn't be doing this, and they were frowned upon and kind of looked bad. Everybody in Mi'kmaq would look at them in a different way. So you have to be very respectful. August right up until December, I forget what the exact date is. I think it is just December. You don't go beyond December because, you know, the mating season for these animals, it's probably late September, right up until November. The best time to hunt them is during the rut, they call it, and that's moose mating season. And like I said, it's later part of September, right up until mid-October. They'll answer these calls, and that's when it's easiest to hunt bull moose. They'll come to you. You don't have to chase them down or anything like that. Um, but you can actually hunt right up until, I believe, end of December. But as I said, and I really don't like that because if it's a bull, then great. But during that time, Christmas or before January, the bulls lose their antlers. They come off. So you don't necessarily know what you're shooting unless they still have antlers. So populations have gone down. It's roughly for every 1,000 moose, there's over 600 cows compared to bulls. So there would be 400 bulls within that mix. So a bull can, mate with 5, 10, 20 females in a season. So, and a cow moose generally produces 1, 2, and up to 3 moose at times. So if you take, for example, 10 cows, let's just say 10 cows a year times that 10. So, or, triple that. It equates to a lot of animals where, the population relies upon those female animals to repopulate, right? As I said, a bull will mate with a bunch wherever he's the boss, just for that trait and that, you know, that strong gene pool of the animal to go into the future. But conservation says right now, and we say, and the Mi'kmaq are saying, don't be taking cows because you're hurting the population, reproductive chain of the animals that we're trying to protect. So please, if anybody ever goes hunting, just try to take bull moose, leave the females alone, or the cows, because you don't know, or the babies, I mean, the young moose. You don't know if that's a bull or if it's a cow. So you'll be affecting that reproduction cycle. So try to stay away from that. I mean, you can take them legally, you can, but in terms of neduling, be very courteous and cautious of the animals that you do take up there. It's
I
important.
think that's a really good teaching, Al. And at the first of the session, I joked that, I call you our moose man, but you actually are our wildlife man. So can you give us some examples of some other wildlife files that you're monitoring and looking after, and why?
Well, I'm monitoring all aspects of the wildlife file in the province. I look at populations of deer, and I speak to DNR on that too. And I mentioned, and I jokingly said about Turo and the population, that we should have a cull here. And that literally would be a cull. It wouldn't be a harvest because of the dangers. All the crazy, all the animals that you have in Truro are just backyards. They're full of deer everywhere. The accidents and so forth. But and bear, like I said, I mentioned bear. We have to monitor that too because it's not a big, it's not something big for the Mi'kmaq because we actually respect the bear. They're completely sacred to us to a point. And I remember, I'll give you a story about that. Being young, I took an animal. I took actually 2 animals in 2 separate years, and I made a bear rug. And one of them I stuffed as a trophy. And Chief Rod came to my house. We were having all kinds of bad luck. Well, I was anyway back then. And everybody that, and he came into the house and, in concern, he saw the bear rug and he saw the mountain, the stuffed animal. So what is this? Allison, I took these animals. So, did you eat? Yeah, some of the meat I did, but generally I didn't. We hold the bear very sacred in Mi'kma'ki and Mi'kmaq. He's a sacred. He's one of our clan members. I felt so bad. Anyway, my father hired my brother-in-law with an excavator. We actually had a ceremony. We buried the animals. and everything worked out after that. But still, this was the wisdom that Chief Rod brought to me as a young fellow, and to my dad way back. And we had a ceremony. So we do monitor other animals, and there's teachings out there that we need to talk to elders about and so forth. But the biggest thing and the other thing would be the salmon. That's another species like eel that I'm associated with, and we did our own salmon management plan over the years. That's a co-management plan with DFO also. One of the very small areas where we actually work well together, DFO. When it comes to lobster, forget it. But as we move, salmon is a sacred species to us too. In general, we have about 500 tags for the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, mostly in Cape Breton, that we're able to harvest 500 salmon, but we don't. We probably take less than 50 from all the bands in Nova Scotia because we know there's a conservation concern there. Over the years, we've had salmon harvests, and in conjunction with the St. Anne's Mission, we've had a feast. This year we haven't. The last couple of years due to COVID, and again with COVID restrictions, we kind of had it tough last year with even moose because we couldn't congregate in big crowds, or we had to stay away from everybody. And moose cutters and butchers, they had all kinds of troubles because of COVID. So contact was a big thing. So salmon is a big file for us. We work well with UINR along with Shelley Denny and her team, but we do regulate, and we do have an impact on how, like today, I was actually, we were on this conference right now, and I didn't accept a call from DFO because I made a call this morning coming in that I need those salmon rivers closed in Cape Breton and Margaree because of the water temperatures is too high. Catch and release for non-natives is the only way they're able to participate in salmon. They have to release them. So anything after 19.9 or 19 degrees, it's unsafe for salmon. They will not survive the stresses. They need cold water. So it's well above that temperature reading right now. And last year, I was contacted by the Margaree Fish and Salmon Association, along with other Mi'kmaq. I was in my trailer in Benyon, just relaxing one evening when I was approached. And I had to write a quick email, and I made a few phone calls to shut down the river. Luckily, they tried themselves, but they didn't get too much progress until a letter came in from the Assembly of Nova Scotia Chiefs stating that we need that river shut down as soon as possible because of the conservation issues with salmon. And they did shut it down. And like I said before, we do have a feast. This last couple of years we haven't, but over the years, as people witnessed, the St. Anne's Mission, we do a salmon harvest in conjunction with it. And we serve the elders and Grand Council and everybody at the mission in St. Peter's, Chapel Island. Yeah.
And I think it's great to see how, things have changed. We do have that co-management perspective on a lot of things. And, the two-eyed seeing approach is taken into consideration. And I thank you, Allison, on behalf of the Mi'kmaq for being part of that. I think that that's really important to our people. It's really important to future generations. And it's funny because while you were talking, even though I said I was moving on from moose, I thought that it might be good to, you imparted some wisdom that you received from former Chief Rod about the bear. And I thought that going back to moose, from your perspective as a longtime harvester, how exciting is it for you to see all our communities now doing youth harvests up in the Highlands and bringing the youth in and teaching them some lessons?
It's one of the best things I've ever seen in my career and in myself being who I am. Over the years, my father wasn't much of a hunter. My grandfather wasn't because they were kind of bold. But I was into that childhood where I started hunting when I was 12, hunting rabbits and deer and so forth, but generally moved into. But I teach my kids this stuff and how I'll give you a little story. One time we were out in the Highlands, and my oldest boy, who has gone past it now, he's gone to be with our Creator 20 years ago. But he's my firstborn. I taught him well, everything. And we were out in the Highlands, and I remember at one point he was like 3 years old. And I took an animal and I was field dressing it, and I looked behind me. He had his intestines of the animal stretched to about 50 feet behind me. He said, "Dad, look at this. It's a rope." So he was covered with blood. But over the years, he shot his first animal at uh, at 10 years old. I had to teach him this because as a Mi'kmaq person, I felt it was right for me. I have to teach my children this because I'm not going to be around, and Lord knows I might be gone tomorrow. Then that's how I saw it, right? I had to teach him what I know about what I have and my hunting practices and so forth. So he shot his first animal at 10, and that was quite the thing. And we get to the animal. He says, "Dad, field dressing." No, you're going to do it because you shot it. So he thanked the moose for offering itself. And I said, "Okay, here's your knife." And he went in at it. And I helped him, of course, along with a friend of ours. But he managed to field dress it at age 10. So a story that's related, we were out hunting a year later. He's 11 now. And my brother Tyrone Bernard, that everybody knows, he's a part of these moose hunts too, for Chapel Island. He went off into the bush with my young fella, our Addison, and he shot an animal and didn't know how to field dress it, a man. So my son at 11 years old had to field dress it for him. He actually taught my brother how to field dress an animal, which he was with me a lot of times, but I would never let him field dress the animal. So it was my fault for not teaching my younger brother not to do this. So we were worried. They came back to base about 11 o'clock at night. So I was livid. Told my brother off and I told my son off too because I was scared for them, right? But they brought an animal and Addison field rested. So this is the way we need to start going. And I saw that need many years ago. And now that the populations are a little bit down and the practice of hunting and hunting, safety and hunting too, you have to take that into consideration. You just don't, people are so consumed with electronics today and efforts around the house, and the stuff we used to do many years ago, it just doesn't exist anymore. So young hunters that want to go out there need to be taught the proper ways of doing stuff, the safeties of it, how you give thanks, and how field dress, how you survive in the forest and making base camps and all this stuff. You have to teach them at a very young age. So we've been fortunate. I've seen a lot of youth camps from the Acadia band, sending a lot of kids, and Millbrook sending a lot of kids over there. But it's also Cape Breton bands. Chapel Island has been very, you know, very much so up there. Escazoni's been up there many times. Member too. I believe most communities have taken part in that, but it's something that needs to be, I guess, brought up a little bit more as we move along. I feel that we need to have some sort of a Mi'kmaq hunting village up there where we have cabins and a main cookhouse. And I told DNR this year, when we have a moose feast too in the Highlands, the annual Blair Bernard, which he was one of my best friends. He passed away at an early age of that dreaded disease, cancer. But we changed the Highlands, the feast, to his name, the Blair Bernard Annual Highlands Feast. And I told DNR this year that I'd like for you guys to set up a tent a few days before that, and maybe during that, you need to start addressing a few things in wilderness survival. How do you read a compass and maps, and how to make an emergency shelter and all this stuff. We need to start going down that road. And I think we can advance this a little bit more and refine it a little bit more to make it a lot more comfortable for them to be up there in certain designated areas where safety and everybody is taught the proper ways of hunting and even fishing. You know, it's a time of year where salmon are going up rivers too, where they can go up and practice how to spear a salmon. Also, that we can integrate a lot of good stuff here within within this camp if we can someday get it going. Uh, Most communities are great with that, but I think it needs to be tightened up a little bit more, and more concentrative efforts need to go into the safety um, of people that are practicing their hunting activities up there. But it's really needed, and it's very important for everybody to be a part of it. And I suggest everybody to go up there if they have a chance and observe and be a part of those communities. I go up and talk to all the kids, and I show them how to call moose, and they just blown away. I mean, I've been doing it so long. I've made videos just to tease these animals, bring them in, and I just told them, get away from me, basically, chase them away. And some don't want to run, so I have to run because I don't want to shoot them. But there's techniques of everything that you do up there. So these camps they've come a long way, and they developed and advanced. But I just really think someday, hopefully, we get enough funding someplace, we might be able to have a Mi'kmaq village up there, a hunting camp where everybody can actually utilize and use it all year, really. Something like Camp Broad, but this would be like a hunting area for the Mi'kmaq in that area, wilderness area. Yeah.
And I think it's cool to know that, as far as we've come, we still have things that we want to do and still have places that we want to take the nation. So I think this whole discussion today, Allison, was awesome. For anyone that is watching, when I did share the moose harvesting guidelines, if you haven't seen a copy, you want to get a copy. As Al said, they were made a number of years ago, and we've been having discussions about how to update them. It was a partnership between KMK and UINR, and an electronic copy can be found on either of our websites. And by contacting either of our organizations, you can get a copy. Allison, before we close, is there anything else that you would like to say to anybody?
No, really, I think I said just about what I can say, but we've done great things too, right? I didn't mention we have a lead-free hunt. We try to have a lead-free hunt. We've gone into partnership with the Hunters and Angler Society of Nova Scotia, and they've managed to do an ammunition swap on the mountain during the harvest, not during the feast, Blair Bernard feast. They bring ammunition, copper bullets up there because lead is a killer to our eagles, which we cherish so bad, so much. So eagles have been dying. We're trying to convince the province to enact a lead-free hunt or lead-free zone in Nova Scotia, especially in the Highlands, because a lot of these animals or parts are left up there which contain lead. And lead goes into the animals and it's dispersed, it goes into the bloodstream and so forth. Eagles are so susceptible to that. So you'll find dead or dying eagles on side of the road because they consumed lead. And that's just a sin. That should never be taking place up there. And there's other animals like coyotes that people don't like too much anymore because of what happened up there. But there's other animal species that are affected by this and that are dying because of lead poisoning. We have to start down that road of trying to force governments and provincial territories and areas where they need to ban the use of lead ammunition for the safety of species that are killed by the lead, not necessarily by the hunters, but it's a byproduct of our hunt. They suffer at the end of the day, and it's not a good thing. It breaks your heart to see an eagle that can't fly, or you don't know what's going on with them because of lead poisoning. That's another thing that's very important to me. We need to get away from, I know copper is a little bit more expensive, but think about the other animals that are going to die from you taking that moose. So that's one thing that we also have to look at also as we move forward. Yeah, that's important.
It's easy to see how near and dear this file is to your heart and wildlife is to your heart. So I thank you again, Allison, for your time today. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers did too. If anybody watching does have any questions, like I said afterwards, please feel free to give us a shout. I know Allison will be all too happy to answer your questions. I thank everyone again for joining and listening. Thank you, Allison, for today. And we look forward to seeing you again next month during our next virtual community session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it.
Bye.